We are back. You are chatting with John P. Today we are going to be talking about 5 must-know watch scams. And by this I mean watch buying or trading scams. There are some scams out there that some people will try to pull off, not only dealers that are not real dealers, but also just guys out there that might be collectors and are a bit down on their luck. So certainly some of these here you might know, but definitely some of these that you would really only uncover if you traded watches at volume. And that's what we do at Del Rey Watches. We trade watches at volume, so we can see a lot more of these things that are going on than we would have otherwise been able to just trading 1 or 2 watches here or there. But once again, thank you so much for coming back. I really do appreciate it. Do not forget to thumbs up, like, and subscribe. It really helps keep the channel floating along, and it's really fun talking with you in the comments below, so leave things there that you'd like to see in the future. And of course, you can find me on Instagram, The Real John P. And by the way, I know there's a handful of guys out there that have been looking for this. We just got in the original Zenith Chronomaster Triple Date Moon Phase. If you're familiar with the watch, there'll be a picture here. I love this thing. It's a classic, and it's something to be reminded of when Zenith made only classic watches. Today, of course, they've gone on and they've started to develop a bit of a younger vibe for the brand, but this is a time in Zenith history where they really were for the classic watch guy. So, moving right into the number 1 scam, and by the way, this is not in any type of order, is that there are some dealers or some people on the internet that will try to sell watches that are not in stock. If you're familiar with eBay and you're familiar with Chrono24, you've probably done some browsing with watches. If you go to Chrono24 and sort by price lowest to highest and you find the absolute lowest price and it's a popular watch someplace in the world and someplace that you might not want to do business with if you're in other locations in the world, if you know what I mean, they have pictures of stock photos with the absolute unbelievable lowest price. Here's the thing. There are some people out there that are just looking to make a few quick dollars at a Hail Mary pass if they can. So if they use a stock photo, you buy the watch thinking, hey, you know, well, it's the absolute best price. And then they reach out to you. They say, hey, this watch is not in stock, but we can sell you these others. They dilly-dally a little bit on getting you your money back. Or maybe with that Hail Mary pass, someone on the other end is somehow able to make an unbelievable thing happen, and they find you that watch and they make a couple of dollars in that exchange. But usually it doesn't work out. It usually involves a very long, drawn-out story of, you know, people being upset because they didn't know better, or perhaps they haven't shopped around for a while and they're familiar with these types of things. So, but the next one is the recently serviced kind of scam, but definitely a straight-out lie. I would say on the forums, you go through the forums, you read different for sales or the want to sells, the want to trade ads on Watch You Seek, Rolex forum, and there's a lot of good sellers on there. We even have a couple of ads here or there going for certain watches that we think would be interesting to watch collectors, but you'll find that sometimes private parties will say recently serviced, and it's always a recurring thing. People will say the watch was recently serviced, recently serviced, recently serviced. And I can tell you by running a service center, there are not that many people that are frequently servicing their watches out there in the public to justify the number of ads with watches for sale from private parties that say recently serviced. Even when we take in watches here, when someone wants to trade in a watch and they say recently serviced, we have Hans put it on the time grapher at our service center and we look at the readings and we say there's absolutely no way this could have been serviced. So when you factor in a retail price of a service at being anywhere between $300 to $1,000 depending on the movement, I think a lot of sellers really want to convey that there's some type of value in the watch, you know, if it would have been serviced. But realistically, for most people, they don't factor that in, and it's very misleading to the buyer to say that a watch was recently serviced when it hasn't been. There are some people out there that always want their watches to be serviced at proper intervals, so something to consider. Now, this next one is kind of in the same category. It's definitely misleading, but not anything that someone can suffer a serious loss on. And here's what I mean by this. There are sellers out there that will sell a watch on a forum and they'll use pictures that are not theirs. Sometimes there'll be pictures from other dealers, or sometimes there will be pictures that were previously posted on the forums. So people that are very frequent shoppers on the forums, they trade, they buy, sell watches. They'll pull in let's say they'll pull in a Zenith and they'll put it back up for sale. They didn't want to keep it in their rotation, in their collection, and they'll use the old photos. Now that becomes very misleading for you, the buyer, for me, the buyer, for anyone, the buyer, because you don't have an accurate assessment of what the wear is on the watch. Maybe they forgot that they banged their watch up against the wall and now there's a dent. They're using old photos and it creates a really negative deal there where there could be things that were not disclosed. And some people say that, hey, it's no big deal, you know, a dent here or there. But I can tell you, working with a lot of collectors like myself, like you, a lot of people do care about these things. So generally, I would take new photos. It's not good to reuse the old ones, and it just looks extremely misleading, and some would consider this to be somewhat of a little bit of a scam. Now, this next one is certainly a scam, and it seems to be happening a lot more since Instagram, Reddit, and other places have really taken off for the watch community. This one goes like this. Here's the scenario. You'll get an email or you'll get a call depending on how you're set up, and it might be on the forums, it might be on Instagram, and someone will say, hey, I recently saw that you posted this watch. And then this person will go on to lead you down this communication road, and they'll claim that it's their watch, the watch was stolen, and they have the serial number. And if you don't gray out your serial numbers in your photos, and some people don't, right? They take a case back shot of the watch. They want to show the movement, or they just want to show kind of the engraving on the case back, something along those lines, and the serial number is there, and anyone could claim that the watch is theirs and it's stolen, and the person that's running the scam is just kind of, you know, taking a chance. It's kind of like the Nigerian prince scam, right? They don't actually expect it to work, but if it works 1 in a million, it still worked once, and it worked for their purpose. It doesn't need to work every time. So they're taking the gamble or the chance that maybe you don't know where you got the watch, or you inherited it, or your friend gave it to you, and you're scared that they might call the police, and you just give them the watch. It's $2,000. Maybe it's not a lot for you, and that's kind of the gamble that they're taking. This one doesn't work a lot because generally in the watch community, people really know where they're getting their watches. But I'm seeing this one pop up a whole lot more in recent times, and I think this one is a good PSA to kind of announce to everyone, hey, blur out your serial numbers when you can, because it's just not a good idea people knowing almost the social security number of your watch, if that makes sense. So watch out for this scam. It's happening a lot more. And lastly, probably the oldest scam in the book with watches and any other thing that can be bought, sold, or traded is fraudulent payments. Now, when you sell a watch, it's generally advised to accept a payment method that is guaranteed. And also, of course, know who you're working with. But if you're on the internet, this is not always the case. Sometimes there's a certain level of anonymity, even if it's at a slightest degree. So if you can't know totally who they are, it's absolutely necessary to get a valid form of payment. And if someone wants to pay by check or money order or an ACH transfer, you should absolutely run in the other direction, especially if you don't know who they are. Now, the person that might want to pay in those methods might not be pulling a scam, but someone that is pulling a scam can use these methods to take the money or the watch from you, depending on which side of the deal you're on. So, for example, if someone says that they want to deposit a check into your bank account, well, the check could be fraudulent. It might show up as a deposit and then up to 2 weeks later disappears. If someone wants to put an ACH, which is not a wire transfer, which is not guaranteed, into your bank account, an ACH can technically, theoretically, and in practice be reversed, especially in the case of fraud, whereas with the wire transfer, it's a little bit more legal. There's much more of a proceeding that has to happen to recall a wire transfer, if at all, depending on the banks and the countries. And if someone says they're going to make a wire transfer or they're going to deposit cash into your bank account, if possible, depending on the country, absolutely check with your bank to make sure that it was not an ACH or not a deposit of a money order or a check, because this happens all the time, even with cars, with anything of value. People will walk into a bank in broad daylight and deposit a fake check because either they're desperate, they're down on their luck, or they just don't care. They're willing to give it a shot. Once again, with some of the other scams, all it takes is one time for them to get away, and you do not want that one time to be you because, hey guys, with watches like the 16550, these things are worth money, so it's almost like there's a target on us at all times. But I think it's fair to say that in the watch collecting community, we've all got a pretty good head on our shoulders. So if you avoid these scams that I gave here and some of the other more common ones, I am sure that you can protect yourself and have fun with watches like we all enjoy and love to do. So what do you guys think about these scams? Please leave in the comments below if any of you have been affected by these scams or if anyone has tried to pull these scams on you. Also, feel free, and I welcome if you leave any additional scams that might be attempted out there because we love to hear about them at Del Rey Watch. We try to stay in front of these scams, but there's new ones popping up every day, so it's something interesting and something to keep on our radar together as watch guys. So guys, thanks again for coming back. You have been chatting with John P. Ciao.